So there's a few points there that everybody listening to this needs to absolutely buckle down and integrate. So first of all, this is what it's like to sit at the big boys table. These people sitting across from you when you're doing $100 million deals, and I've done $100 million, billion plus dollar deals. Of course, that makes sense when you work at top law firms. So it's no magic or anything. When you're sitting at those tables, everybody at that table is thinking, and I'm not being rude or whatever when I say this, they're thinking how they're trying to get a one-up on you in every single way. That's what I'm doing at the table. That's how you're trained when you come up at the big boy table. What happens is, if you're a guy who built your construction business for 20 years, things have been going good, you've been banking it, now you're gonna sell it. You didn't just spend 20 years at that table, and now for the first time, you're sitting down with the sharks, and you're thinking you're making friendly. You're getting way ahead of yourself. You're not supposed to be friendly until that guy's paid you cash in your bank. I think the point made there is very clear. You have to be aggressive. You have to be respectful. You can't be giving anything away. Your whole point is maximizing dollar. And that is what it is. Again, the second point being that at that table, I'm watching people. I'm like, oh, this guy's a softie at this table over here. Not you, Jerry. I'm like, oh, this guy's a softie over here. I'm gonna find out all your weak points. I'm gonna find out what you really wanted. Now I can push these terms down. So, at the big boys table, everybody's playing serious games. And lastly, the last point I wanna make here real quick about what you're saying, and everybody needs to stop doing this.
All right, everybody, before we get into today's episode, I got a favor to ask you. If you have been watching the podcast for a while and you're getting something out of all of this, I want you to take a second and hit that subscribe button, please. When I started this podcast, the goal wasn't necessarily to chase views or interview celebrities, but I will take all of that. It was more to sit down with interesting people who have lived a life and built businesses or overcome hard things or have something worth saying that we all can be entertained by and learn from. That's still the goal. It always will be, because that's what I find entertaining. That's what I find interesting. So if you believe in what we're building here, I want you to hit subscribe. And in return, I'll keep doing my part. I'll keep finding guests who challenge the way we think, who will tell the truth about business and life. I'm going to make this show worth coming back for you every week. I appreciate all of y'all more than you know. Now, let's get into today's conversation. Everybody, check this out. Joe and I just start talking. It's a beautiful thing. That's what these podcasts are all about. Joe spent a bunch of years helping entrepreneurs buy and sell businesses. That's what he is here to talk to us about, an M&A attorney, which I think is easy to misconstrue, and you miss the interesting part, because a lot of these guys have been on the front row of these moments in people's lives, in the entrepreneurs' lives, which for a lot of entrepreneurs are what you build towards. Can you sell this thing? And then do you have the expertise around you to help you do what short of, buying or selling a house for an average person, an exit for an entrepreneur or an entrance for an entrepreneur buying another business is probably the biggest deal they will do in their lives. So having done that myself, I know how they become personal. I know how these things aren't just assets. Again, you're doing it in all those years of stress and payroll mistakes and wins and relationships and identity. In my case, fortunes made, fortunes lost. So today I want to talk about all of those things. I want entrepreneurs to understand what this world looks like, what they should try to find, and what their expectations should be when they find professionals to help them. With that said, Joe, I appreciate you coming on. And right in that vein, as we were talking about that one thing, finding that person that can help you, I think that the entrepreneurial, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs, very, very successful. And the one thing that I notice, and I'm guilty of this, so I think now in my later years, I appreciate this more, is that we hate being wrong. And we will try to, by our nature, because we're entrepreneurs, we will try to manipulate the circumstances so that we sound like we know what we're talking about. And I learned this probably in my mid-30s, though, and a lot of my success is due to my ability to filter what my experts told me. They're the expert. I'm the decision maker. But when you have a good expert on the other, working for you, that can be everything. The difference between a good deal and a bad deal. Having said that, and there's a question, The problem is so many experts, let's say attorneys, M&A attorneys as an example, they struggle with risk. They struggle with what being an entrepreneur is. So in that context, understanding that mindset of an entrepreneur, because a brain, an attorney brain, and an entrepreneur brain are two very different things. An agent's brain is very different from an entrepreneur's brain. In that context, how do you answer that question, or how do you help a client through that?
Yeah, I know. So here's the biggest point. First of all, you got to make sure your expert you're hiring is somebody you want to listen to, right? So you have to make sure he's qualified. He's done that thing before. You're going to see a lot of attorneys out there, even M&A, who have never done that type of business sale before. And now they're trying to give you advice. And so now you're already getting lost. You're already getting bad advice. And so being able to filter that is absolutely critical. You know, again, being an entrepreneur, if you've been doing things for several years, you're going to start to get slip ups because you rely on the bad advice. So that's one of those early lessons we learn. So now in addition to that, in addition to filtering, so how do we deal with risk? How do we deal with an attorney and their risk advice? The number one most important thing, and a lot of people get this wrong, is you got to make sure anybody, if it's attorney or not, whoever it is, that they have real practical business and experience. Yeah. And like we were just talking about a moment ago, it's not just an accountant running some numbers. It's not just an attorney in this. Everybody does this. Here's your form. That is not what you need. What you need is, Joe, hey, I've looked at all the risks here. And by the way, I'm not getting, like, the seller, I talk to him, don't buy this business. I can sense guys when I talk to them. I can sense out when they're bullshitters, when they're too stubborn, we're not going to be able to make a deal with them. I can sense out when they're hiding something. It's shockingly easy, man. Like, people out there aren't like evil geniuses. I like to say they're evil and dumb. Right. And so it's usually, there are evil geniuses, but usually when you run into a bad situation, it's because you ignored your own common basic sense, if you got any. And you got to make sure that your attorney or your advisor, anybody you're dealing with, has that common basic sense. Otherwise, they'll give you your form contract to sign. They'll send you to the slaughter when all the guy should have said was, hey, Joe, hey, Jerry, I don't like that seller of that business. Something is going on here. And I'm telling you right now, you got to figure that out or we're not doing this deal. And that's the type of thing that I tell people, that any good advisor should tell people. And let me tell you, you're not trained necessarily. I'll say necessarily. I can't speak for everybody. You're not necessarily trained that way when you're just a puppet at a big law firm who's spitting out forms.
Yes.
So,
yeah, that's great advice. I love that approach. In that context, typically for small business, the attorney is getting paid by the hour. The agent on the deal is getting paid on the deal. I have a lot of issues. Again, I've built, bought, and sold many, many, many companies. So I have a lot of experience here. And I quit using agents years ago after my second deal because I realized that I couldn't find the right guy that would then go out and get me the money that I wanted. They were more interested in getting the money that they wanted, i.e. the money that would get the deal done. So the attorney and the agent almost can't be simpatico necessarily, right? Because in a way they want two different things. That's my interpretation of that. Would you agree with that, or do you have another take?
Yeah, I'd agree with that 1,000,000%. Now, I need to shout out there to all the brokers, the agents who I know and work with that, hey, there's good ones, and then there's the other 99%. There's the
great
bad
point, 1,000%. I agree with that 100%. So that's a good point.
Yeah, right. And so about that very thing, you know what? I've been making fun of agents. I call them brokers, whatever it is, intermediaries. I've been making fun of them for years. And again, I always shout out to the good ones. And I'm not making fun of them. Making fun of them for years. And I've always say to everybody exactly what you just said. They usually only make money on the commission, on the sale. It's a success fee business. So they're going to push it's their job, it's their incentive, their motive to get to that sale, hell or high water. And let me tell you, I've seen them do this and have their seller, on the sell side, have their seller sign contracts that aren't worth, shit. The contracts aren't worth shit. They're having them sign it because they get paid. If the buyer comes back and sues the seller a month after the closing, in 99% of circumstances, there's always exceptions. In almost every single circumstance, the agent already got paid. It wasn't their motivation to protect the seller. That's where the attorney's role comes in. When I do buy side and sell side. And so when I'm on the sell side, it's my job to protect them. Now, responding real quick to the point about there being adverse interest between the broker and the attorney, let's say on the same side, on the sell side. It is true, but the way I do it is I work with them. I'm trying to get a deal done. Attorneys are for me, I never worked this way. So whenever people say this, it blows my mind. But again, that's just my little context bubble. People always say, man, I had an attorney on this deal. He's a deal killer. Attorneys are deal killer. It's a common thing you hear in him. And it was never the way I came up. It was never the way I did it. My job is to find the issue and solve for the issue, right? So in that vein of thought, I'm very much so aligned with the sell side broker. Nonetheless, there's all sorts of weird incongruencies that come up. Like I'll see them like make up dates and deadlines just to create fire under people's asses. And I'll see him sell a boatload to the seller just to get the seller in on the deal. Even if I'm like, man, this buyer's a tire kicker. Why are we? So there's definitely, I'm not 100% aligned all the time at all with brokers if we're on the same side, but I'm definitely trying my best is what I can say for myself.
I have helped numerous people buy and sell businesses. One of the common things I always say about entrepreneurs, one of the critical pieces of advice I give entrepreneurs is all entrepreneurs, generally speaking, think that the mistakes they're making, only they're making. And they look next door to the entrepreneur and he's got the house and the wife and the cars, right? And they look to the other side and the same thing's going on over here, but he's suffering. And they think that they're the only ones that make the same mistake. And the reality is if I work with all three, they all make the same mistake and they all think they're the only ones making the same mistake, right? So it's really an interesting dichotomy for entrepreneurs that are successful and think that they're making mistakes. In that context, the one thing that I see if all three of those businesses try to sell is they're too friendly. What I mean by they come to me and they go, Jerry, we're selling this. Can you want to advise on the deal? I'm happy to do it. Doing it with a sporting goods store right now up in Philadelphia. And I say, you got to hate. The other side is the enemy. So you trust but verify. You have respect, right? It's not just respectful, but I'm super aggressive. I'm super competitive, right? But again, I'm unemotional. I know those things don't really go together, but they do because that means I'm in control and I'm making good decisions. And so often I see two sides come together and they're working together. And I go, no, you guys, they want you to pay as little as they can. And you want them to pay as much as you can. So your wants are diametrically opposed and you need to approach it that way. And I think that a broker will trying to bring the two sides together again in a way that is not necessarily valuable to the seller, maybe, usually to the seller. And the attorney, if they're strong, can do a good job of making sure, no. We need to push for the side that we're battling on. I guess that's a long-winded question and an explanation to say
it's good.
That those two parts there, from an entrepreneurial perspective, my first advice is you got to view the other side as an adversary, not an asset. What's your take on that?
No. So there's a few points there that everybody listening to this needs to absolutely buckle down and integrate. So first of all, I love this. So I'm not just being nice. Like I'll say if I think something's dumb as shit, I'll say it. I love this. You're so on point. This is what it's like to sit at the big boys table. These people sitting across from you when you're doing $100 million deals, and I've done $100 million, billion-plus deals. Of course, that makes sense when you work at top law firms. So it's no magic or anything. When you're sitting at those tables, everybody at that table is thinking, and I'm not being rude or whatever when I say this, they're thinking how they're trying to get a one-up on you in every single way. That's what I'm doing at the table. That's how you're trained when you come up at the big boy table. What happens is, if you're a guy who built your construction business for 20 years, things have been going good, you've been banking it, now you're going to sell it. You didn't just spend 20 years at that table, and now for the first time, you're sitting down with the sharks, and you're thinking you're making friendly. You're getting way ahead of yourself. You're not supposed to be friendly until that guy's paid you cash in your bank. because
right.
all you're doing is being nice to the girl who hasn't even started dating you yet. And again, there's nothing wrong with being nice to women, but it's the point. I think the point made there is very clear. So first of all, I want to break this down into a few things and then kind of cap off my point here. But first of all, that's exactly what it's like sitting down at the real business table. You have to be aggressive. You have to be respectful. You can't be giving anything away. Your whole point is maximizing dollar. And that is what it is. Again, the second point being that at that table, I'm watching people. I'm like, oh, this guy's a softie at this table over here. Not you, Jerry. I'm like, oh, this guy's a softie over here. He doesn't even know who he's fucking sitting with at this table right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm going to find out all your weak points. I'm going to find out what you really wanted. Oh, you just wanted legacy. You want, no offense to, it is what it is. This is the business. No offense to people in the business. Oh, you just wanted legacy. Well, that's great because now I can push dollar price down. Okay. Oh, you just wanted to make sure that your employees were happy. Oh, that's great. Now I can push these terms down. So, at the big boys table, everybody's playing serious games. And lastly, the last point I want to make here real quick about what you're saying, and everybody needs to stop doing this. A lot of people do this because I represent buyers and sellers every day. So when I say a lot of people, I mean, I got 50 live transactions right now. I mean, people are always doing this. Before then, I just said it, but I'm going to break it out a little bit more for people listening. Before the deal closes, people are like, I had one client, he literally moved cities for Ogden, Utah, I think it was. I think that's right. He moved to Utah to go work with the seller. I was on the buy side. So my buyer client goes to works with the seller. Before the deal has closed, he's expending money. He's moved there. Absolute fucking insanity.
My God.
Yeah, and that's not the only time I've had people do this.
Yeah.
And they're talking like, oh, here's the strategy plan. And it's like, man, how about we do terms? We all, again, we're not even married yet. And you guys are planning to have kids and what kind of house you're going to buy. It's absolutely insane.
I think that people don't appreciate how complex, if you're selling a business for $1 million or $50 million, I don't think that people appreciate how complex that deal is going to be, how difficult it is to get it done. And that is given that there is no huge haggling back and forth. I mean, there's 100 deal points. There's a million things that have to get ironed out. And this idea that you just go sell it, I think we need to make sure that the listeners understand who find themselves in this position, that it's a war to buy or sell a business, and it has to be approached that way. Hey, everybody, quick break. I want to tell you about something I'm doing for the first time. I'm putting together the first Kronos Group cohort. That's 10 business owners max. And understand, this is not a course. It's a peer-level work with other operators and direct access to me on a month-to-month basis. We're going to go deep on what actually moves the needle for businesses, like systems and sales and leadership and staying sane while you're building something real, fitness, health, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. This group is for you. The people who get in on this first cohort get founder pricing, and that's the trade for going first. And it won't be open long, and it's not going to stay at this price for sure. If you've been listening to this show or me and thinking you need a room like this, you probably do. 10 spots, founder special. Check it out. The link's in the show notes.
And so what ends up happening is people very often think, and this is both in the main street, like the small deals and the lower middle market, they often think it's like buying a house. It's like, oh, I'm selling my $20 million business. There's a process. The accountants, everything's going to pass through. It's like, no, you just started the war. This is it depends on the deal. This is obviously, it can go quicker and go slower, but this is a several month process, and people need to know it's like having a full-time job. And you'll say, Joe, but I have advisors doing all the work for me. Let me tell you, the requests, unless you have a deal team, like you've done several deals before and you have a real built-out org, if you don't have that, all the requests, the things, they're going to get through the advisors, and you're going to be waking up every day. You're going to be answering and asking questions. It's like a full-time job. And so many people are doing their full-time jobs. Say, again, we're on the sales side. Say you're operating in that business still. They're doing that, and now they're selling it. And before they even get to the close, they're burnt out. They didn't. And now guess what happens? That buyer you fell in love with tells you, oh, this isn't bankable. Sorry, it just happened on a deal I spent 8 months on. Buyer backed out. I was on the sell side. I was so pissed. And so they backed out, but now the seller is tired. And that was just the first inning. Now they're frustrated. Now they're worn out. Now they've actually banked on that sale closing, right? So you got to be real careful when you're selling a business. It's not just, I like to say, it's not a magical universe out there where guys coming to give you millions of dollars. It's its own expertise and profession unto itself.
Entrepreneurs looking to sell their business, listen to me when I say this. Do not spend $1. Do not make one plan. Do not assume one thing. Do not have post plans. You can think about it, but you spend any amount of time on it. Joe, I'm going to ask you, from my own experience, helping people and doing them myself, I've seen them blow up when it is a done deal, sign here, I'm in the room, and they figured out a reason not to sign. So go ahead, you know it way better than I do. Let's warn everybody about what this looks like and how it's not done till it's done.
My God, it's an absolute, and I'll just be myself. It's an absolute shit show. And so let me tell you about a closing we just did. It was on the 12th. I didn't even got so many. Okay. It's 2 weeks ago now, right? And so it was on the 12th. Okay. I can only say generalities, obviously not going to break the attorney-client privilege. So this is what happens. We're a couple weeks up to closing. We think everything's said and done. It's June. The deal started around October. So we're already 8 months in, and it should have been a 4-month deal. That is what it is. Things kept coming up. And I literally am on the phone with the client. I say, hey, the attorney gave me an update to our due diligence. I'm on the buy side. Seller's attorney gave me an update to my due diligence request, and they said, it's not that big of a deal though, guys. And this is when the big deal is about to explode, right? And they said, the attorney said, it's not that big of a deal though. It's just, well, by the way, it's a construction type business, not just a general contractor. Construction type business. By the way, there's some illegals in the business. By the way, they accounted for those illegals. I got to be really careful what I say in a certain way. And so here we got this problem. And they had said, hey, Joe, it's like 70 grand in misaccounting, just a couple of illegals, not a very big deal. What ends up happening in this, I'll say the John Doe case, what ends up happening is the buyers then go talk with the seller, and they say to the seller, hey, we talked about this problem. And the seller ends up saying, wait a second, that's not a $70,000 problem. They misaccounted for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And they weren't doing the employee authorization, the I-9s. And this is literally a few days before closing, an absolute shit show. And so this is after 8 months. This is what I'm saying. It's never over till it's over. Anything can come up at the end. Now, when you have a good advisor on your hand, did we work through it and totally negotiated a discount? I made my client money off of that. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So, you work the problem. You don't let the problem sink the ship, but nonetheless, stuff does come up at the very end, and it can and will. I do have deals that die from stuff like that. So it's not like, oh, the magic man is going to fix all your problems. Nah, deals die and you lose money and wasted time all the time. So
how important is it when you have the people on your team like you, that as the owner doing the selling, that you give to someone like you all of the information, good or bad?
It's really weird because a
lot
of
people call that a leading question. You already know. I mean,
so the answer is they don't.
Yeah.
People like to hold back. Even when you tell them, just give me all the information, they're just so conditioned to it. I don't say the bad things. So, but then when you squeeze them, or when the time crunch comes, the juice comes out and you're like, man, why didn't you just tell me earlier?
Right.
So,
right.
That's a thing.
Everything can be, there's an answer for everything. And just because there's negative, I've not ever necessarily seen the negative in the end cost that much money. The story being told early and often and in the right way, oftentimes can come back and it can inure to the benefit of the seller, as long as it's out there early rather than it coming back late. Where what I want the people to hear, where it's going to cost them money, is to your point, a couple of days before, a few weeks before you've been working on a deal for 4 months, and you drop it 2 weeks before it's supposed to close, that can get very expensive as opposed to just telling you, hey, this thing's got some hair on it. Here's the hair.
Yeah, no, you absolutely need to do that up front, because then we're getting into, when you don't disclose, now we're getting into welcome to you thought you sold your business, but now you're in a lawsuit. Now you're having real fun. So if you don't disclose it, you're in absolute hell. If you disclose it late, you got to pay money. But here's the deal, is you might say, well, Joe, it's not that. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Okay. I'm telling you now before the end. First of all, you might not know how big of a deal it is. Second of all, I'm still going to use it against you. Even if it was a minor thing that you didn't disclose, you're 8 months in now, you're about to close. I'm going to hold it against you. I'm going to get some type of, again, it being somewhat material, right?
Right.
It has to have something I can leverage and argue about. I'm going to use it in some way to negotiate with you. And that's what, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, when you're in the room with these sharks, whatever we want to call them, with these real tough people, they're going to take advantage in every way they can. And it's the accepted game. I'm not talking about like unscrupulous advantage. There's that too. But this is the standard. Like if you leave something out to the end and they don't leverage it against you, like that would be you're dealing with an idiot at that point.
Yeah, I usually describe it as a pyramid. And let's say in your 6-month example, 8-month example, the pyramid is the bottom of that pyramid is the first couple of months. That's when you have time to build that foundation, get your story together, put your numbers right. Get how you're going to sell this business. And as you get higher and higher, the cost, the expense to something you missed when you should have been building that foundation gets higher and higher, to your point. So that if something that should have been down here comes out up here, but it belongs down here, what happens to the pyramid? Falls apart. Yeah. And you end up costing yourself money. But we're almost programmed. That's why I'm spending a few minutes on this point. We're almost programmed to want to set aside the bad and just talk about the good, or maybe make the bad look not quite so bad, and assuming then we can get over it at the end. And that's really when it gets expensive.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I would agree with you, especially on the language of, it's almost how we're programmed. Again, when you're used to doing big deals, you actually become rewired in, you disclose. Like, so sure, maybe you fix the problem first and then disclose that there isn't a problem, right? But we don't play in the universe of not disclosing, or, there's that one thing. They're not going to figure that out. Let me tell you, I do the lawsuits as well when the deals go wrong. And it's great for me. I make a lot of money on these lawsuits. So I'm very happy with it, right? But nobody else, what we say, and you've heard this one definitely before, is nobody wins in these lawsuits but the lawyers. And so, the seller's in a suit, the buyer's in a suit, nobody's happy. Obviously, I'm not just banking and I'm trying to win the case, but so absolute.
Yeah. Steer clear of a lawsuit, no matter what you do. I'll tell a very quick lawsuit story. 30 years ago, my first couple of years in business, I got sued over a payroll issue. I was right, and I was young. I was doing, my business did 4, 8, 12, and then $14 million a year in those first 4 years. So by that time, I'm, 4 or 5 years in, man, I know everything. And I said, I'm fighting this one back. My attorney said, no, let's just settle. I'm like, settle? I was right. I won. Cost me $125,000 to go to court and win at a jury trial. But the judge in Portland, Oregon, and I'm assuming this is everywhere, you can tell me, you'll know better than I do, doesn't award damages to the corporate side. So in terms of, even though I had to spend $125,000 to prove I was right and I was found to be right at jury, it still cost me $125,000, and the employee and the attorney who were suing me aren't going to give me my $125,000 back because they don't have it, and the court doesn't award that anyway.
Yeah. So what we say is, you just for defending a suit, you don't always get attorney's fees. You don't get the cost of suit back. And in fact, it's actually the exception of getting cost of suit back. So one of the ninja tricks, again, I know, it's a minor issue, not to bite too much into it, but here's a little ninja trick that everybody needs to know. Whenever you do a contract, and this is obviously what I do with all my contracts for clients, is you have to have an attorney's fees provision in there. If the other side breaches, you get attorney's fees. That's how you solve for that problem. No, I can't say nobody, a lot of people don't do that in their contracts. You're suing the guy for breach or defending, and then you don't get your money back for the defense. Of course, if you get a counter, if you succeed on a counterclaim for fraud or something, that's another way you could get damages out of the guy. But anyway, so a little legalese there.
So you've got 50 deals working right now. You've obviously been through this ringer at all different sizes and scales of deals from both sides. What's the biggest misconception that entrepreneur or business owners have about their business, and maybe more specifically what their business is worth?
Yeah, that's a great question. For that, I'm going to isolate down to specific business sizes. So let's talk about the guy who's selling a business between the price of $1 to $25 million. He's making a couple $1,000,000 a year. So what's the biggest misconception about that? I'll just run through from memory here a lot of the things that come up. So first of all, they built a business. You're 2 years in. The thing is flying high. You're so excited. You're like, I'm going to sell this business. It's like, let me tell you, 2 years of financials, a little up and down, a little turbulence, and then that 1 year flying high. Now you're going to exit it. You seem to not know what you're talking about. Like, sure, there might be a strategic buyer there, and you have a patented technology. Your patents take years to issue, so probably don't even have a patent. But maybe you got a strategic buyer there willing to pay up a nice multiple on an acqui-hire. But generally, you have to have multiple years of success and proof. And when people buy businesses, they're buying like complete packages. They're not just buying, that one supplement was doing really well that 1 year and you had like 5 products and the other ones didn't do so well. That's not necessarily, again, outside of strategics, what people are looking for. We want the full package. You have your systems in place. It's not operator dependent. You have your books in place. You have your product creation pipeline in place. You have the reviews. You have you're above the competition in certain ways. You have to have all these things in place, and you're selling an entire business. You're not just selling what you thought, because you think it's great. You own a business and you're making money. You think that's what people want. That's not the only thing buyers want. I'm talking about your typical buyer wants the full package. I'll just leave it with that. I could talk for hours and hours about seller misconceptions.
So you mentioned this, and I want to come back to it in your answer there. So many business owners, their business is a reflection of themselves. And so they look at the business as here because they built it, it's their baby. And the reality is the market might look at it here. And that is that area in between can be very difficult for that owner that lives and breathes his successful business. It can be hard to swallow that. So let's talk about that. When you start doing due diligence from the buy side, what are those buyers looking for, and how do they evaluate the business as opposed to the person who's running the business?
Yeah, so most importantly is that financial performance, that steady financial performance. If you're in a down year right now, I have a deal I'm looking at right now. This year went down half. It was like 750 EBITDA, and it's currently at like 450 EBITDA for 2025 currently. 2024, 750. It was going up, and the sellers think this is a 750 EBITDA business. They think, man, it's going to be 850 next year. We just had that down year. You and a buyer thinks, I can't even bank this.
Right.
The lender's not even going to loan on this. So
Right.
first of all, we're already in different universes. Now it's not even bankable. It went up in one of these, and the seller's like, no, you got to trust. I know my business. And the buyer's like, what are you talking about? Financials are the trust. That's what the bank uses. Now, if you had 10 years of one of these and you still went off, banks still don't want to see that. So it's a huge problem. And now you're not even going to get the deal you wanted. Now you might be doing some type of earn out or some contingency fee payment if it shows growth in the future. Now you being the seller here in this hypo, now as you as the seller may need to even wait a year or two just to prove it was a blip. And you're like, Joe, but I was trying to retire right now. I just put everything into shape. And now, man, I'm exhausted from that. I'm in the sale process. I'm exhausted. And now I need to wait a few years. And I'd say, yeah, again, your agent should have told you that. But you know what their agent in this deal is doing? List the business, trying to sell it.
That's
The
it.
agent wants that commission now. Do you think the agent wants to wait 2 years? They don't want to wait 2 years. I bet you they didn't even tell the seller this shit's unbankable.
Yes.
And
right.
so it's a big problem.
Yeah, that's you beat me to my next point. So well done there, which is that don't assume you can sell your business. Do some research. Talk to guys like Joe. Reach out. Spend a little bit of money to figure out if you even have something to sell. And more importantly, is it the right time to sell? Is the market right for it? What's your business history look the last 2-3 years? Maybe 3 years ago was ugly and the last 2 were good, and you're almost done with the third. 3 solid good years of financials might be worth waiting the 6 months before you take it to market. That sort of thing.
Absolutely. No, that's 100% correct. And there's a whole entire category of people out there. Again, you got to pick between the weeds. No offense to these guys. Not everybody's trying to sell fish oil, but maybe they just aren't that competent, right? You got to pick between the weeds and finding these exit planners, these exit advisors. And it's a whole separate category from brokers as well. And then a lot of people are just depending on like Claude and AI. And let me warn you, like the latest Claude, the benchmarks, it even says on the legal, I don't know what it says on the financial benchmark, I didn't look. On the legal, it says Claude, obviously Anthropic, the most sophisticated model out there. Fable 5, the one it's on freeze right now. It came out a few weeks ago. Fable 5 has a 13% quality in its legal skill. So I'm just saying, like, AI doesn't have your answers. A lot of experts are going to be selling you snake oil. So you really have to just go find somebody like Jerry, I don't know, who you have to find somebody who's going to actually give you the right advice on whether or not it's really a checkbox list, man. Like, is this business sellable to who, when, where, how? And, but the thing is again, like going back to, I'm seeing deals all the time where a few months in you uncover the rat's nest and you're like, why did the broker put this deal on the market?
Yeah.
I have another deal right now where the broker acted as the, is this the one going to litigation? I don't remember. So last week, 2 litigation from M&A cases come in the door. And one of them, the broker, it turns out, was the accountant for the business. And lo and behold, the accounts are wrong. And you're like, Joe, isn't that illegal? That sounds unscrupulous. I'm like, welcome to America.
Right.
Okay. Not everybody's that way, but we got both good and evil here. And you got to be ready for it, especially when millions of dollars are on the line.
Yeah. How often, I've always said that businesses or business owners, the key, the world, social media, I have 2 social media questions. The world on social media, television, popular TV shows, you got the restaurant owner that's screaming and yelling and throwing hamburgers at people. And then you got the motorcycle builders. And of course, they're hucking wrenches at each other and the camera follows them outside and the dad screaming and yelling. And you got the car builders, right? And the car falls on people and everyone screams and yells and it's quality television. And people have this idea that this is what business looks like. They also have the idea that series, funding series companies that are angel invested or, find outside money. It's a small piece of the big pie that is entrepreneurship. And so they have this skewed idea of how business really works and how business owners really function and what for the 35.5 million, however many there is, small business owners, what it takes to do that. And I think where it comes off the rails is you think that being emotional, right? You think that because you watch a LeBron James flop and then yell at the referee and the coach is yelling at the players and the referee and everyone's yelling and the umpire gets dirt kicked on him and all of that people think that's the real world. And as an entrepreneur that has had success over the years, what I teach them is, man, there's no emotion. There's no ego. You got to stay calm, cool, and collected and make good decisions. Here's the question in that diatribe. How many times in your experience does ego get in the way of what is otherwise a well-run business and stops a deal on either side from happening? Before we get back to the episode, let me ask you something. Are you tired of being told that ambition is toxic? How about masculinity is a problem? And the answer to every struggle is that you should lower your standards. Well, I am, and that is why I built the Kronos Forge. It's a free community for men who want to get more out of themselves, quite frankly. You want to lose weight? Build a business, get a promotion, save your marriage, find a relationship, become a better father or an employee, a better friend, a better businessman. How about get your money right? Or maybe just get around men who refuse to apologize for wanting more, something we have done since the dawn of time. If who I am, if what I have built, how I think, and the way that I see the world resonates with you, then you need to get in this room. Nobody is coming to save us, and that is fine with us. Go to thekronosgroup.org/George.
So it's super common in the bigger private equity deals. You start to like these people are at your level where they're like, oh, like I'm not in the way of myself. But even on your $20 million businesses, especially the smaller you get your $5 million businesses, it's super common. I like to use the word stubborn a lot. They sort of have these, again, their ego, their conditioning. They have these beliefs about how this deal is going to go. And I'm only one of the things you hear, and you might have seen this before, Jerry, there's all sorts of ways these stories happen. One of the ones you see is the seller saying, well, my whole vision of my retirement is selling my business for $2 million. And that's the price I want. And you're on the buy side and you're like, dude, you're profiting 300 grand a year. Nobody's freaking giving you $2 million. And the seller's like, well, but that's it. That's the end of the line. That's what I want. And it's like, okay, man, it's like, why are we even talking? There's those. And then there's sellers who they think they are the business. So one of the, I'll put a little pin in my answer with a really great tidbit for anybody out there who buys a business is never let the seller stay in the business post-closing, except for minor transition work. I see people do it all the time. Back to lovey-dovey. We're in this boat together. Maybe he's a great sales guy. Maybe you really put him in a corner, but man, I can't tell you the amount of times where the seller stays on. Maybe he's helping with sales. Maybe he's really good at something. He has his office. They think they still own the business every freaking time. They think it's their business. They think they are the business. You can't break through that ego, especially if they spent 20 years building that business. Like you said earlier, it's their baby, it's their kid, and that will kill you. So I have several construction litigation lawsuits I've had over the last few years. Seller stays in. He's like, no. He gets in, tries to break the business. Now we get to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees.
Emotion. There's no money being emotional, making decisions emotionally. You need to be pragmatic. Probably the things in a lot of ways that built your business from that perspective. With that, you've negotiated a lot of deals, right? What personality trait, if we're talking to entrepreneurs now, you've got a room of 1,000 entrepreneurs. What's the personality trait that you have found that makes someone maybe a better entrepreneur as opposed to somebody maybe that's impossible to do business with?
You know, it's really funny. Life has its way of teaching you the lessons that you need in business as well. So life will teach you that you need to be able to calm yourself, center yourself. You need to be able to look around the corner, be analytical, be logical, think through the problems. You need to have common sense. You need to see something for what it is. If you see this guy's a problem, maybe if it's your employee makes a mistake, you give him a second chance. Okay, there's nothing wrong with giving second chances. But if you're dealing with a multi-million-dollar business and this guy hid something from you, man, oh man, am I already nixing him off the list. He might as well have hid 5 things from me at that point. I can't trust him anymore. And so you need to be really serious with judging people. You know, we're told do not judge. Hey, I don't know how to reconcile these differences. We're told do not judge. And I'm saying you gotta check these people get them out of the room, or you're going to be in a room full of these people who are trying to take money from you. And so, you got to be calm, level-headed. You'll find that when you're calm, you're not excited to get the deal done. You're not getting ahead of yourself. You'll find that when you're calm, you're not afraid of the deal going sour and you're trying to bandage a piece of crap deal together. You'll find when you're calm, you're not going to get angry and irritated when the other side, oh, it got delayed 2 weeks. So be it. We're closing though, and whatever, you got your protections, yada, yada. So that's really the answer to the problem. And then I'll also throw one last thing out there. It's also okay. I'll say, and I had to learn this one the hard way. It's also okay to be angry and yell at the other guy. Because if you don't say it, no one's going to say it for you. If you let the guy off the hook after he lied to you, what kind of man are you at that point? You're not even standing your own ground. Now we got a whole nother set of problems. So you got to be able to tactfully know, like, okay, when emotion is part of the game and when to not let it get in the way of the game as well.
Yeah, I use the example of somebody, I'm racing through traffic and I cut somebody off at a light to get through and I get over on a line of 20 people. And I'm all happy with myself because I cut in at the last minute and the other 20 suckers are still sitting back there. Then I say to the entrepreneur, I say, okay, now flip that because they're pissed because the other side said this, that, or the other thing. I said, now flip that around and you're coming up to the light. And at the last minute, somebody whips in front of you, gets the light, leaves you sitting there. You're irate. You're beside yourself. And I say, but you just did the same thing, only in reverse, right? And you were all high as a kite about it. This guy just did the same thing to you, right? And now you're all pissed. So that doesn't make sense. You have to square that up. And the way to square that up is just put yourself in their shoes, right? Understand that they're coming after you the same way that they're coming after you for things you don't want to give up the same way you should be coming after them, right? If the roles were reversed.
100%. And again, there's rules to the game as well. There's rules to selling a business and buying a business. And if you break those rules, you're never going to sell a business. You'll get straight up blacklisted if it's like cutting somebody off here. But if you're a buyer going around and you don't have proof of funds and you say you do, man, oh man, the broker community will find you out real quick and you won't be buying any businesses. And so there's definitely a lot of karma and repercussions in it as well. And again, like I'd like to say, like, keep calm, deal with professionals on the other side. Tell if it's somebody you can talk to and work with. Those are the best deals when at the beginning, the other side of the table say you're a buyer, it's a seller. You know that we're both constructive problem solvers and you know we're analytical and logical and we're not screamers. Those are the deals that are going to be great. Again, there's other factors that come into play as well, but so there's all these sorts of, we call them like seller psychology. There's all these sorts of psychological elements that come into play as well on the buy side.
Yeah, and there's always things that you can't prepare for, but at the same time, what you're alluding to is just a good foundation going into a deal will help the deal get done. And as you just elucidated, some of those traits that help or that belong in that foundation to make sure that A, the deal gets done, and more importantly, you maximize your return and or you pay what you should for a business.
100%. I couldn't agree more.
Social media, which I am not I love using it, but I'm not a big proponent of it in terms of education for things like what we're talking about, contrary to this conversation, which will then go on social media. So I understand the hypocrisy in that. Is 80% of it what I see relative to business is BS. And that's, again, as somebody who's built from the ground up and have helped a lot of people do that. So I've seen it firsthand. In that context, I think that social media lies to the average person about what it takes and what goes into buying a business. And so in that context, they make it look easy. If you could do one thing, maybe two things, you tell me, you flesh out this answer on your own.
Yeah.
What's the part nobody talks about in the context of people getting told, oh, it's just simple. You just go, log on, find the business you want, you go buy it. We know that's not true. Social media lies to us about that. What's the part nobody talks about in that context that people should know before they even think about going down the road of buying a company?
So like, it's so weird when I first started speaking at these big influencer M&A conferences where a lot of people learn about buying a business from social media. I go there, I was blown away. I was like, and I'll answer this in two parts. This is the first part. I was blown away. I get to these conferences and I'm like, everybody is really excited here. Everybody's smiling. Everybody's so excited to buy a business. And these are people who never worked in M&A before. And I'm like, this is crazy. Yeah. And again, this is an M&A lawyer coming into the room. And I've seen the risks. I've seen the $150 million deals explode, like signed, paid, somebody missed a term in a contract. So I'm coming in here. I'm like, I've never seen a room full of people cheery and excited, let's buy businesses. And so again, I'm not trying to dog these people right now either. I represent a lot of them. Okay. So the point being is it blew me away. And then I get up and I'm very sober minded. And I tell these guys, I'm like, hey guys, we're all excited here. Let's bring it down a notch. Let's play realism for a second. There's a lot here. Let me tell you about 5 things that are going to make you go bankrupt and how to get around them. And there's 50 plus more that I'm not even telling you about. So that's kind of me talking to the crowd at these conferences. and it's really crazy. So people are overly excited. If you're with expert M&A people in a room, I mean, sure, you get a great deal. Somebody's going to be excited. So I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but these people aren't going to conferences like adolescent children going to their favorite band's concert. That's not what people are doing. And that was something that has stuck with me ever since the first of these social media M&A conferences I spoke at. And so that's the first thing, is be real careful when you find yourself being excited. It's a quick little lesson that there's a lot more to pay for something than such an easy deal that you might be sold on. Now the other part of the question, so let me just say, what are a lot of people not realizing? I don't know. I'll just say, I could say a million things here, but I'll say one thing I always say to myself, and I try to explain to people. They usually don't get it. I'll say, like, there's a reason that, so in the past, we say Joe 1990 is who was doing M&A. There's a reason that like the smartest and again, like non-Ivy Leaguers have done this before, but there's a reason that the smartest Ivy League graduates go to New York and work at the smartest finance companies, and they do that for 10 years. And then 10 to 20 years later, these are the people doing the big, good M&A deals. There's a reason there's so much education behind this expertise. There's so many lessons you have to learn to be really good at it. And just one day you're working your 9-to-5 corporate job, you're 45 and you think you're going to be an M&A expert. Goddamn, do I have news for you. You're not going to be. And you're never going to be as good as those guys. And you got to check that. So what do you do, Joe? I have clients thinking that. What do you do? Well, obviously you hire experts. So, I mean, obviously there is a solution to the problem, and you got to be really smart, coachable still to even make that equation.
Is there a business myth, one thing in particular with all of your experience, that you wish people would stop believing?
Business myth. I like the thing you said a lot. Like, I haven't heard other people say this. Maybe people say it. I like the thing you said a lot about people hear about the venture capital. It's like, I'm going to go raise $1 million. I made it. As if raising a round, a seed round, an angel round, a Series A, as if that is making it. Making it is profiting like $1 million that year, and you have the defensible moat, and that's going to be a consistent thing. That's making it. So it's so funny when people convolute, or they think raising money is making it. No. Raising money is is one of the things you get to accelerate your making it. And a lot of people don't know that. I know a lot of really smart people. It tends to be engineers for some reason that really, they think getting the funding round was the win. So that's one thing I'll call out. I could say a million things. Yeah.
Post-business closing. Give me a lesson entrepreneurs have had to learn after they've sold the business that was not to their benefit.
Yeah. And so post-business closing, people don't know that these things, we talked about this a little bit earlier. I'll break it out a little bit more though. People don't know that so many things end up getting litigated. They think that it's like buying a house. Let's talk from a buyer's perspective. Like, hey, we signed some contracts. I bought a house. I checked everything. I have a completely different deal I hadn't talked about yet right now that's going into litigation. And the guy checked it's a little bit his fault. He checked the accounts himself. He passed on legal due diligence, red flag. I did the contract. So he's like locked and loaded. He's got the belts and suspenders. He's like, there's only one way this is turning out litigation. He's going to win. But he checked everything himself. And then the seller didn't disclose that the price of materials had greatly increased just a few months before closing. And so now suddenly the business is not profitable, and we're in litigation territory. So I guess just to sum it up for the sake of time here, thinking about it, is people aren't aware that so many people do go bankrupt when they sell or buy a business. Even if you sell a business, like, you can get sued and lose all the money you just got. Like, they never think that. They get real, I like to see, the rosy glasses or whatever. They think everything's a magical universe. A lot of people think that way. Maybe not the real exceptional businessmen out there, but you get in litigation a lot. And I'm happy to be representing people in litigation, just to be clear. Give me a call if you're getting sued. Like, that's my business. But nonetheless, they don't realize like how bad litigation is. You're in it for 2 years. You're getting deposed. You're stressed out. It gets to you inside of you. Not when you're, hardened, right? But it gets inside your head and you're thinking, but I didn't do anything wrong. Man, you've already, it's already in your head. And now you're going to be on trial. like it really messes with you. And I've seen people go through that in age years of their life
Yeah, I
just from
agree.
having had a bullshit lawsuit. So it's kind of like be aware with any big transaction is what I always try to tell people. If it's selling a business or a partnership, just doing a simple partnership as well, those end up in litigation a lot too. And so people just need to be ultra eyes wide open, have an expert attorney on their side, guiding them through it. And I could say a million other things
Yeah.
about, doing
And,
it right.
and real quick, as we go out here, I got one more question for you, but I just want to comment real
Sure.
quick. I am not a big advocate for partners. I think that partners are, everybody likes to commiserate in those early days, right? When you're building that business. And then it's all great when you're losing money. And then as soon as you make money, each partner looks at each other and goes, ah, shit, I could have done this without this guy. And then the whole thing falls apart. So having an attorney, just that's not necessarily M&A in this context, but having somebody drop your paperwork for your partnership is probably every bit as important as when you sell the business, because I mean, more often than not, that thing's going to, as soon as money gets made, the thing's going to fall up. It's a good chance that things are going to go south. You know, that you work hard, I work harder than you didn't come in on Sunday, blah, blah.
Oh my, yeah, no. So, you hit the nail on the head, and I wouldn't have expected anything less from you, Jerry, because like, this is the thing, is you're talking to a guy, you're all friendly about the upcoming adventure you're going to have with this business, and the mood gets high, the excitement, the joy, the propensity to kind of put yourself a year ahead. But it isn't until you've been in, and it's happened to me, and I'm an attorney. So you're like, Joe, or you're like, Joe, what? You're a litigator? And you've had partners breach on you, they must be crazy. And that is indeed what I think. I think they're absolutely batshit crazy because I sued them for it and got settled out. But that's what people will do. That's the lesson to the story, is partnerships very often result in litigation. And so I'll say two last things to close it out. You always plan for the exit, like you were saying in partnership docs. I do this whole thing. I even plan, what if the partner becomes disabled or passes, goes to his estate. Like, we plan for all these things. You plan for the exit in any partnership that you're going to take seriously. And second of all, I have a rule. So you said something, we're really on the same page with all this stuff. You said something that I always say is there can't be two captains of a ship.
That's right.
And it's happened to me where I've had the co-captain. I'm like, oh, this guy's brain dead. I'm like, oh, fuck. And now I'm like renegotiating control terms a few years later. And I'm the guy who knows all the control terms and knows how to write these contracts. It's happened to me as well. And you can't have two captains to a ship. Everybody needs to know their role. And if they don't fit in, they got to get off.
Last question. We're going to go turn philosophical real quick at the end here, because I think that some things, business it's not always about the numbers. So you've watched people spend, their entire lives building out these businesses only to sell it. One day they hand over the keys. Generally, I think for most people, in my experience, they've been happy about that. Others, though, I've seen a few that the people are just completely lost and they really never recovered. So from your perspective, what have you learned, this is the philosophical part, about purpose after the business is gone for the owners?
Yeah, but so we're talking about the purpose of the seller. Is that right?
Yeah. What about the seller? You spent 30 years building the business. You sold the business for big dollars. Now the business is gone. Most people take their money and run, but there is some people that they're lost because their identity went with them. That purpose that they got out of bed every morning is now gone. And the bank account doesn't necessarily replace that purpose.
So I have a real great answer to this one, like a real deep one as well. Not just, go start something new or go refocus on the kids. Those are great ideas. But because I see business transitions so much, I have a really great philosophical deep answer to this one. And I'll quickly apologize. I'm just telling them I'm going to be late to this litigation call. So I'm good. So that's why I was looking at my phone. So what do you do? So you're the seller. What happens with your purpose when you sell the business? Well, here's the thing. It's all about this conditioning we live in. When you wake up every year, say you're in the military even for 20 years, you wake up at that, whatever, 4 a.m., I don't know, I've not been in the military. You wake up, you have this regimenting, this conditioning. The more and more you do that, the more and more it can be harder to break free from. So what happens is a lot of sellers sell this business and they want the business back. It's very weird. You'd be like, Joe, really? But they sold it and got millions of dollars. That's how I felt too. Obviously, smaller deals, bigger sellers, private equity sellers aren't doing that. And so their ego becomes tied up with the business. So now they've actually have a hole in their heart. They've actually lost something. They want the business back. One of the litigation cases I have right now is the seller actually couldn't untie himself. He actually just threatened the buyer the other day. If you don't give me this just happened to me last Monday. Yeah, last Monday. Buyer tells me, he says, the guy, Joe, invited me to coffee, sits me out at the coffee table. He said, you're going to hand me my keys back by Friday to this business, or you're going to notice that the employees are going to start leaving. He literally said, I'm like, that's extortion. The guy's like, that's extortion. I'm like, yeah. So now they're actually giving the business, I have a deal right now to avoid litigation. The buyer's actually giving the business back after spending several months on the process, closing, paying the guy, over hundreds of thousands of dollars upfront payment. And now they're going to do the whole unwinding. So it's crazy. So back to the deeper element. So that's just a little bit about purpose and sellers getting tied up into it. I'll say the real answer is, when you get older, you're in your 40s, your 50s, I'm just hitting 40 right now. You really can lose sense of life. You can really lose sense of finding a deeper purpose in life because you've been so focused on business the whole time. And especially if you're really good at it. Like there's an old Chinese saying, if you're really good at something, you'll find yourself keeping doing that until you're worn out and you got nothing left. So not in those words, obviously more Chinese words were involved. And so what I'm saying is there's a checkpoint that when you sell a business, need to realize that you have to say to yourself at that checkpoint, okay, let's recalibrate life. Let's identify the deeper purpose to life. Maybe that's going and doing some of God's work. Maybe that's going and helping people out. Maybe that's going and figuring out that life wasn't all about doing construction every day and yelling at your wife. No offense, but that's life. And so there's a huge mind fuck that happens to these people. They retire at 60 and they haven't even learned these basic lessons of life that it sounds like I have learned when we're much younger.
I love it. How do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. You just go to my website, Prencipe.com. So the spelling of my name is right here. That's how you kind of book a call with me. That's how you talk to me. Again, what I do is represent people who own businesses on large transactions and lawsuits. So if you want really great advice, please feel free to come by. But otherwise, it's been a great pleasure, Jerry. Thank you for having me. This has been a fun conversation. Again, as you can tell, we're just shooting the smack here, and I want to call out to anybody. Please make sure you leave a like, a comment here, subscribe to this. Because this is really gold level advice on this podcast. And I had a fantastic time talking to you here.
I appreciate you coming on. That was a fun hour. Thanks, Joe.
Hey, thanks a lot, Jerry. I appreciate it.